And it's the last day of hurricane season. It's a celebration. This is Tracking the Tropics. I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson. Yes, I think this is definitely a day everyone along the Gulf Coast, Florida, East Coast, Southeast Coast should be celebrating.
Yeah, we have been relatively quiet the last few weeks, wrapping up hurricane season today. And to everyone at home, it's my fault that we didn't do this on Tuesday. I've not been 100%. I've been feeling fine, but my voice has been dead. And the bosses actually forbade me from doing extracurricular activities because I still had to do the 6.5-hour morning and noon shows. So my apologies, Jeremy. Thank you for rolling with it.
Yeah, I think it works out well, though. In hindsight, looking at it, last day of hurricane season, we have all the numbers in. We're confident no more tropical activity here, at least in the foreseeable future. So we'll roll with it and kind of break down the season that was.
Yeah. So for right now, as you mentioned, Jeremy, thankfully there is no tropical development expected. Water temperatures are still warm-ish in the Caribbean and even into the Gulf of Mexico. But, there's a lot of instability, a lot of wind shear, and so we're probably not going to see much. May have one or two randoms, but generally it's going to be nice and quiet, hopefully for the next 6 months.
Yeah, that would be great. Give us a lot of time to regroup and get ready for the next season ahead. We did not even have a named storm. I don't think during November we had so many of those areas of interest that just hung around, looked like they might develop. None of them did.
Yeah, and I mean that's great. We still had plenty of time to track different areas and kind of add them to our long-range hurricane chart. Which reminds me, by the way, we forgot to put the graphic together before this, and so that's fine. But we will have to in the next couple of months do a random tracking the tropics to just kind of update everybody once we kind of get into some of these cycles to work on our long-range forecasting.
Yeah, I think that would be good sometime, maybe the first half of January. We can get everyone back after the holidays, regroup. We're starting to get, I would say, a clearer idea of what the pattern may look like, and also maybe some early ideas of potential cycle duration.
Yeah. So there's all exciting stuff, but let's just start with kind of a review of the hurricane season in terms of the numbers, and Jeremy, in terms of our forecast, my friend.
All right. So our joint forecast here was 14 to 18 named storms. We had 20. That does include one unnamed storm that occurred back in January. Hurricanes 7 to 9, there were 7. 2 to 4 major hurricanes, there were 3 of those. I think overall, I'm plenty happy with how this turned out, just because we were going against the headwinds of an El Nino season. A lot of people just saying, hey, those upper level winds may play a role in keeping the numbers down. Our analysis, we were really thinking we were going to probably see a little more activity than the previous season, when we had 14 named storms and we ended up with 20.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned the headwinds, but I think that it's important to remember that when we issued our hurricane forecast, we were way earlier than everybody else. I mean, we issued our hurricane forecast March the 1st, and that's what we will be doing in 2024. So even before others' preseason forecasts, we were calling for this kind of above average regime, when there was, in the meteorological community, no discussion of that whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess that's true. We just knew that there would be an El Nino heading into summer, and you remember the season before was La Nina, so we kind of went against what the ENSO sort of averages are for hurricane season.
Yeah. All right. So let's do this. Let's look at how our preseason forecast compared to everybody else. So our numbers for total named storms, 14 to 18. There were 20, as you mentioned, Jeremy. NOAA / the National Hurricane Center, which issued theirs last, was 12 to 17. Colorado State's early forecast, which was that May the 1st?
I think it's the first week in April.
First week in April, right. So they're right after us by a couple of weeks. They had called for 13 named storms, and AccuWeather had gone 11 to 15. So we have discussed this offline a lot. I'm very happy with our numbers. Did we undercut a couple? Sure. But I'd say that our margin of error was as small as would make us feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, I think so. And all those other forecasters that we show there eventually kind of caught up to our numbers or maybe even exceeded it by one or so.
Yeah.
Later in the season, I don't think anyone surpassed 20 storms or mentioned 20 until could have been even after July.
Right. And our forecast, by the way, when we issued it, it remained untouched. And that's kind of our goal every year, is to try to leave it completely quiet. I mean, I think that, if we need to make a tweak, we will, but that's definitely against the grain for our methodology.
Yep. Let's take a look at the areas that saw the landfalls this year, and I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. All right. So let's start off with our hurricane forecast. Let's just do this, okay? So these were the areas highlighted in red that we had said were hot spots. Parts of the, North Carolina, South Carolina coast, the Florida East Coast, and the Florida West Coast. And then in addition to that, we said maybe not as clear of a signal, but we had highlighted the northeastern United States, kind of from like the Delmarva up through coastal Jersey and South Texas, as areas that the pattern had highlighted for potential activity, but not as great of a signal. So putting all of that together, this is the area that we highlighted, okay, on March the 1st. These are the landfalls for the year. And Jeremy, once again, I'm happy to say that I say once again, and I think this is our second year in a row doing that, where every single landfall did hit one of our landfall hotspots.
Correct. And even that one that we had highlighted down there in South Texas, we had some indications from the Bay of Campeche leading up to it in our pattern. So we put that there as, again, as you mentioned, maybe kind of leaning a little bit more likely to see something down there versus the hot spots where we're like, hey, these are the areas that really need to watch out this season. So we had Harold down in South Texas, a tropical storm. Then Idalia was a major hurricane at landfall. And Ophelia was a strong tropical storm that went into North Carolina. So those are the paths. And obviously you were busy during Idalia. My area saw some impacts as that week into a tropical storm. I did a recap of that. I'll probably be posting that sometime today, but we had tropical storm force winds. And then one of the big things here was 5 to 10 inches of rain in a very short amount of time for some of the counties that we cover. So we did have some inland flooding.
Yeah. Now, you'll remember, friends, there was other systems that impacted Nova Scotia and Maine. But Jeremy, you and I had chatted offline. Those were not tropical in nature upon making landfall.
Yeah, I think one of them was not named anymore. That may have just brushed Maine. And another one that actually went into Canada. So those did not count as landfalls. They did bring some impacts to those areas, just like any coastal storm would. I mean, back in late May, we had that sort of discussion/argument where we thought that thing could have been subtropical. That obviously brought some impacts to the coastline. So you can get systems, whether they're just coastal lows, nor'easters, that act a little bit like tropical systems sometimes. But what we're going with here is sort of the official stuff from the National Hurricane Center.
Well, and the argument there, too, is that system that was around South Florida, 2 weeks ago, right? That bombed through hurricane force winds, 10, 15 inches of rain. And that's a clear indicator for us looking ahead to our hurricane forecast for next year as well. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be tropical to give impacts, but these are tropical forecasts. So, I am very, very happy with the results, not only of our numbers, but also the results of our landfall points as well.
Yeah, and I think next year, the last 2 years, we have not had Louisiana in a hot spot. So
that's a big point to make. Absolutely.
Yeah, that area of Texas through Louisiana, that has not been in a hot spot. But not to play spoiler, but I think from our discussion the last few weeks, Louisiana probably leaning towards they're going to be in a hot spot.
Yeah, I would think so. So, for anyone that's watching this, it's pretty new to it. We issue our hurricane forecasts every year. And I think that, to play devil's advocate, the naysayers would always say things like, well, you're highlighting these areas, of course they're going to get hit. But, we did not show the northern Gulf Coast and they did not get hit. And the same thing the last couple of years, they've not gotten hit. Whereas this upcoming year, indications are that will be a bit more of a hot spot. So we'll have to certainly dial that in. And like you said, not to play spoiler, but that's kind of one of the things that we're watching looking ahead to next year. So we don't highlight the entire coastline, but where we do highlight certainly it's kind of surreal, right? Like the last 2 years, we have had 100. I can never, ever ask for 100% accuracy, but we've gotten that the last 2 years.
And I think even going back to 2020 when we did this, we had the hot spots, and I believe that year had 10 or 11 landfalls, and I think we only missed like one of those was outside of our forecast.
I think the 2020 storm. Let me pull that. I'm pulling that up
because that was an active year, very active year.
Yeah, this is the landfall hotspots for 20. I mean, these are graphics I haven't touched in years, but this is the landfall hotspots that we did for 2020. I don't know if this has got. Yeah, there's the landfalls.
Okay, and one thing that year too is it was such a busy year, but we left the Florida Peninsula out. And remember, our hotspots, we really look at those basically through about early October because then the new patterns forming, and that's things that we really haven't ever seen yet. So that's all new. But yeah, look at those. Those were the landfalls back in 2020 and the hotspots. So that year, yes, we did have the Gulf Coast really highlighted, but then Florida was not.
And Florida did not get hit very clearly. So yeah, I mean, the methodology is remarkable, and I cannot wait to really get into the meat and potatoes of doing this forecast with you. We're dialing in on cycle duration, and so yeah, maybe the first week in January we'll start, talking a little bit about that, discussing with our friends here about that, and getting everybody prepped for our March 1st hurricane season forecast reveal.
Okay, and since we didn't do this yet, we can do it kind of like real time here. If you want to bring up the map with the lows that we're tracking this year.
Oh, yeah, for this year.
Yeah.
Hold on.
And I believe the last time we talked, so it was on that previous Tuesday, so just over a week ago. If you bring that map up.
I'm getting there. It says WESH.
Yeah, no rush.
It says WESH, and I apologize.
That's all right. So I'm looking at our, we kind of go back here for the last week. So I'm scanning through this here. On Saturday, November 25th, a good ways off the Carolina coastline, kind of between all those lows, you may want to drop another one.
All right, so let me copy this.
Yeah, kind of go up a little bit and then a little bit more offshore. Anywhere in there is fine.
All right, November 25th. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's, and then on November 26th, we need another one almost in the exact spot or just a touch east of that low that is directly south of Louisiana.
Yeah. You think a touch south?
Just just a touch east, actually, and a little hair closer to their coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there, it fits.
And that would be the 26th.
And then we need a low, that one that's close to the Outer Banks, one that is just a little bit south of that.
Yep.
All right.
That's going to be the 26th.
And then on the 27th, you can add another low. It's kind of still east of North Carolina, just a touch north of that one.
Hold on, Sparky.
All right.
Okay, there you go.
That's it.
So that one would be like just east of the 26th?
Yeah. So that's good.
And we'll do that for the 27th. All right. And then, after that, looks quiet.
That's good. Yep, that's good. And also we think that we're probably then potentially starting to repeat the cycle.
Yeah.
So we may just kind of leave this map as is. What we will do, Eric and I, is we'll sort of confirm cycle 2. We'll get December, January, and then have a pretty good idea because we like to see these go through at least 2 times, 3 if possible.
But, looking at this map, at the very least, you've got an idea why we have been, not to play spoiler, but like why we have been discussing, hey, maybe the Gulf Coast is going to be a little more active this season.
Right, because last year at this time, when we were starting to kind of just plot some of these lows, a lot of them were way down in the Bay of Campeche. Um, and then I think we had just a couple in the far northeast Gulf.
Yeah,
If
here's
memory.
last year's map.
Oh, okay.
Very clearly leaving the northern Gulf Coast quieter.
Right. So that sort of gives you a good indication why we just included that very southern portion of Texas with maybe a little bump up in a chance of a landfall there with our yellow hotspot
Yep.
kind of. And then the main ones were basically centered in the Eastern Gulf, Florida, and then towards the Carolinas.
Yeah, I mean it's it's remarkable. I every year when we work on this, it's like such a I don't want to say it's such a stress point, right? As I display our 2023 kind of cycle numbers for now. It's not a stress point, but it's a forecast that you and I just take so seriously. And it's nice at the end to look back and say, like, you know what? Our forecast was solid. We did a solid thing.
Yeah, I think the methodology we use is definitely different than most. We take a look at all traditional methods as well. We incorporate maybe a little bit of analog stuff that we take a look back at, some climatology. Obviously, some things are a much bigger portion of our forecast than others. But at the end of the day, we are very confident in our numbers, and we will put them up against anyone.
Yeah, and we do, and that's what I love. So that's a wrap. I love to say on hurricane season 2023. Good riddance.
Yes. Hopefully, everyone down in your area stayed safe when we had that major landfall. It was kind of a quick mover, made that landfall, got out of there. I know in my area, some of our southern counties, especially some of the agriculture areas, did sustain some pretty significant damage due to just tropical storm force winds and a lot of rain.
Yeah.
So even in a year that seemingly was a little quieter with the landfalls, you still get people that are impacted by these tropical systems.
And you know, it hit, and this may sound a little rough, but like it hit in perhaps the best place it could have because it's such a sparsely populated area there in the Florida Big Bend. And when I flew our news helicopter up the very next day, Jeremy, you saw there was, a lot of people without power. But some of these, like Horseshoe Beach, I'll never forget, was just mangled. But the next isolated town up, it was just some minor damage. And so it's like where that worst eye wall, where that right front quadrant came in for Idalia, for example, one small community is having a heck of a time these next few months and years perhaps, but it wasn't a widespread event like it could have been if it had moved into Miami-Dade or if it had moved into like the low country of South Carolina or something to that effect. So it's like that was a true kind of threading a needle of sorts where it was an isolated event. But the numbers were very big this year. And so it'll be interesting as we work through our hurricane forecast to see what we look at for numbers next year, kind of setting up this pattern in an El Nino, but where do we trend? How does that play out through analogs and stuff? So that's paperwork you and I have to do.
Right. And also, I feel like we had maybe not all of them developed, but we did have a lot of lows once again out in the open Atlantic this fall. So I don't know. Definitely could be a little busy next year, but we'll release those numbers, I guess, on March the 1st.
Well, and another point, and maybe this is a good, final point, is we've watched what we think is the first cycle through. But over the last few years, if there's one thing that I've picked up on, it's this idea that in the second cycle, there are other features that pop up well bigger than the first cycle. And so it's like, oh, there's another thing to look at that I didn't even and then when you go back, you're like, oh, there it was. It was just much quieter. So, having a second cycle to see what other things step out of the weeds will give us a real good baseline to make that hurricane forecast.
Yeah, so we still have all of December, all of January. This year's a leap year, so we get one extra day to prep for our hurricane season forecast release.
Of course.
You're like, no, be fewer days in February. Let's just get it done.
What I love is Jeremy says that our hurricane forecast is like 85% done by mid-February, and then we just make minor tweaks. So he's adding that one day. It's like, it's just one more day until we hit the go button, you know?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think you and I right now could probably write the outline for
Yeah.
the hurricane season forecast and then just fill in the blanks as we get a little bit closer. But yeah, we learned so much in December and January, and I think regrouping sometime maybe the first half of January with everyone. Obviously, let us know in the comments if that's something you want, is for us to get back together in January, and we certainly can make that happen.
You know, and if they want it, which I've got to believe they would, they're sitting here listening to a couple of weather nerds talk for half an hour. We should figure out a day that's like symbolic, like halfway from the end of hurricane season to our hurricane forecast or something silly like that. I don't know.
Right.
You know, something that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
symbolic.
definitely something like that. So
To what?
Uh, yeah, I think something like that would be good. We'll find a time that I think all the viewers are got a free moment and can watch us talk more about the upcoming season. But we'll give everyone a break for now.
I'm
We'll give
good. I'm
everyone a
good with
break.
that. Do you have anything else?
I don't. It's been fun. I think this was a good little thing we did on Tuesdays this year. I know we just kind of take a little part out of our day, but you know what? Instead of us sitting and looking at a computer, we're just chatting with everyone else about it.
100%. And I appreciate you rolling with me, Jeremy. I think come next year, it's probably a good idea for me to get these graphics to you as well. That way, if I'm in the middle of a hurricane coverage like Idalia, in the event, like Idalia, if I recall, I was still able to do this with you.
Yeah, you popped into the newsroom.
But in the event that there's like a major, that's the one thing that like in the event that I'm in major hurricane coverage where I can't step away, then maybe I need to get this just in case. That way you can do it solo, or I could do it solo if you're in major, coverage as well.
Yeah, that would work out just fine.
Perfect. All right. Hey, from sunny and cool Central Florida, thanks for joining us this hurricane season. Look forward to next year. I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
All right. Thanks for checking us out each and every week in Savannah, Georgia on WJCL 22. Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
Jeremy, we're still going to have our daily talks, right, buddy?
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Bye, guys.